Welcome to Should I Read It? Should I Read It is a weekly podcast that takes a deep dive into books. I'll provide a summary of the book and tell you how the ideas in the book relate across all the books we've covered so far. Welcome to Should I Read It, episode 36. Today we're going to look at Talk Triggers by Jay Baer and Daniel Lemin. Marketing is hard. There is so much advice out there about it. Should you be doing long-form content? YouTube is a huge market. But what about the expertise gained by writing books? Before you decide what type of marketing to do, you need to understand the goal of this whole marketing thing in the first place. It's to sell yourself. Even if you're in a job, you're selling yourself to your boss, proving that you're worth the salary they're paying you. For those of us that sell other services, we're working to build up trust so that we can sell you those services. This intersection of trust and marketing is where Talk Triggers by Jay Baer and Daniel Lemin comes in to help you. Specifically, the book is designed to help you build word-of-mouth marketing and referrals through that word-of-mouth marketing. Baer and Lemin say that word-of-mouth marketing works because of the era of trust we're in. Namely, that people trust their peers more than they trust what your company says about itself. Here's how they say it. We're in an era where trust matters more than truth, and the truth is that your customers simply don't trust you as much as they trust each other. Talk Triggers was written to address this trust factor in the form of word-of-mouth marketing, specifically because 100% of businesses care about referrals and less than 1% of businesses have a plan to implement a repeatable referral process. In the eyes of the authors, the most reliable way to do this is to have a talk trigger that makes your company stand out from the competition. A talk trigger would be my story of Chaco replacing my sandals. I had sent a pair in to have the sole replaced because I just worn it out. They accidentally glued the straps in place so I couldn't adjust the sizing of the sandal anymore. It still fit, but I could no longer make it tight enough to work on the river. When I called them, they sent me a new pair of sandals for free, and I got to keep the pair I already had. Yep, I've told this story lots. Yes, it's sold sandals for them. Yes, 10 years later, I'm still wearing Chaco sandals almost every day of the year. The great warranty service of Chaco is a talk trigger. Talk Triggers is broken up into 4 sections. Section 1 shows us the importance and impact of talk triggers. Section 2 introduces us to the 4 criteria something needs to meet to be a talk trigger. Section 3 is about the 5 different types of talk triggers that authors identify. The final section gives us a 6-step process to find and implement a talk trigger in our business. Let's dive into Section 1, why talk triggers matter. One of the biggest thoughts that caught my attention as Baer and Lemin talked about why talk triggers matter is that the same is lame. If you're the same as your competition, then you don't stand out. When you don't stand out, the only way to compete against the competition is based on price. Here's how they say it. If your product isn't talkable, then cost becomes the sole basis of comparison. That begs the question, can your business model survive a race to the bottom? Can you cut the price much lower than it is now? Can you survive on less profit and more hours? The answer for most industries is no, you can't do that. To combat this race to the bottom, you need to dive in and show that you're different than the competition. A second great idea in the first section is that your talk trigger can't be generic. They use the analogy of hotels that started talking about their amazing beds. This was a talk trigger at first, and then the competition quickly had the same differentiator. So this became suddenly a minimum viable entry item instead of something that defined a company. You really stand out with something that can't be reproduced easily by your competition. The final reminder that stood out to me is that social media is not the main thing you need to focus on. Most people understand that social media is all the highlights, and all the highlights aren't talkable. Social media may be part of a good marketing campaign, but it is not the whole thing. As Baer and Lemin start to introduce us to the 4 talk trigger criteria, they remind us that just being different is not a talk trigger. If I had a large purple mohawk, it could not be used as a talk trigger for my business because it gives me no business advantage. I'm just different. In a way, that doesn't help my business at all. The 4 talk trigger criteria are 1. Be remarkable. 2. Be relevant. 3. Be reasonable. And 4. Be repeatable. Now let's take a minute to dig into each one. First up, be remarkable. Being remarkable is not the mohawk I just talked about. It's the huge menu at the Cheesecake Factory. A menu that is huge is a talk trigger for a restaurant because it gives them a business advantage. Someone can come and find something that they want to eat when there are so many choices. According to Bear and Lemon, this even works on the skeptic consumer. That customer that assumes you are doing something for the marketing reason and sits there jadedly thinking it won't affect them. Here's how they say it. Being remarkable is so effective that it encourages people to talk about you even when those same people fervently believe being remarkable has no effect. The second criteria for a talk trigger is that it has to be relevant to your business. If your talk trigger has nothing to do with what you do, then it doesn't matter. As the authors say, to be a differentiator, your talk trigger needs to be relevant. It should support your broader company positioning and objectives. It has to make sense within the context of what you do, who you are, and what you stand for. Third, be reasonable. Let's start with a quote. Customers are suspicious when businesses promote something that seems too good to be true, because they've learned that it often is. Unfortunately, customers have learned that an offer that seems too good to be true often just is. I had my internet provider call me a few months back and offer me a much cheaper plan with more speed and more bandwidth. I spent 10 minutes asking questions to ensure that there wasn't some catch before I said yes. Those 10 minutes were all coming from my years of experience with telecommunication companies. From the times I've looked at current plans to find out that they offer more speed, more data, cheaper prices, or something that I am not getting because I didn't watch their site every day to take advantage of some new rate. You need to bring forward a talk trigger that seems reasonable, or you need to have built up enough trust to support that outlandish one that people just can't believe. The final criteria for a talk trigger is that you must be able to repeat it. If you can't systematize your talk trigger, then it's a publicity stunt. Here's a quote from the book. Any differentiator that happens circumstantially is a publicity stunt, not a word-of-mouth strategy. This is like the story of a forgotten stuffed toy that is mailed back with pictures of the extra vacation that the stuffed animal took at the hotel. Not every customer can have this experience, so it's not a talk trigger. It's nice, and we should look out for opportunities like this, but it's not a talk trigger. Section 3 is here to introduce us to the 5 types of talk triggers that Bear and Lemon have identified. Before we dive into the types of talk triggers, the authors give us a great bit of wisdom about what a talk trigger is. Here's how they say it. The gap between the expectation and the reality is the fuel for stories that create word of mouth and in turn produce new customers. They also outline that you must hit all 4 of the criteria of a talk trigger, but only one of the following items. You don't need 3 types of talk triggers to qualify, only one that hits all 4 criteria for what makes a good talk trigger. Talk trigger 1 is talkable empathy. Bear and Lemon use a debt collection agency to show talkable empathy. Instead of the common tactics of belittling and menacing people that have debt, this company is nice. They understand and work with people without berating them. Yes, they collect a much higher percentage of debt. Yes, many of the employees were former debtors that interacted with this company. Meeting your customers where they're at and empathizing with any struggles they have can make you stand out. Talk trigger 2 is talkable usefulness. Useful talk triggers are items that your customers love to use. As I read this, I thought of the headline analyzer from CoSchedule. The book talked about the Sky Couch from Air New Zealand. This Sky Couch makes the flights of people so much more comfortable. It bucks the trend of airlines squashing us into as small a seat as possible. Talk trigger 3 is talkable generosity. Have you ever had your coffee paid for by the person in front of you in line? How did that feel? Amazing, right? Talkable generosity is all about offering your customers something above and beyond the expectations they have for your services. This is the zoo that has a conference center. When you book a conference, every single one of your attendees gets a free zoo pass for the day. Bear and Lemon mentioned a busy restaurant that has you choose a card from a deck as you order. If you get the Joker, your whole meal is on the house. Yes, even that baseball team that showed up could pick a card and get the whole meal for the whole team for free. Talk trigger 4, talkable speed. One of the things my wife loves about Lululemon is the speed of delivery. She's ordered stuff late Thursday night and had it show up on Friday. That type of speed is what they're talking about with their 4th talk trigger. Bear and Lemon say that the biggest problem with speed is that everyone can get fast and that people can change their expectations of speed. Here's how they put it. Speed is a moving target that you will consistently need to invest to protect the remarkability of your talk trigger. Talk trigger 5, talkable attitude. To use Lululemon again, talkable attitude is the message on the bands of my workout shirts. One says, do it for the bacon. I enjoy the messages, and this is how they show some of their attitude. My own attitude is shown in my not Christmas cards. I don't send out cards during Christmas. I do it sometime in January and call out that I'm late. I made a choice not to get shoved under the other cards that everyone else sends. If you're looking to build your attitude, then Badass Your Brand is one of the best books I've read on how to develop a brand that stands out. P.S. Silva fills an excellent book with ways to build this brand that is you and does not conform to the crowd. The final section of this book walks us through the 6 steps that Bear and Lemon say we can use to build our own talk trigger. Before we dive into these 6-step process, they remind us it takes work to build something worth talking about. And here's how they remind us in the book. To be effective with initiatives like talk triggers requires both great process and great mindset. It is exceptionally rare for a great idea to be born and immediately thrive. Talk triggers behave a lot like products. They need constant evolution, optimization, refinement, and user feedback. Step 1 of the process is to gather internal insights. They propose a triangle of awesome as you build your team. This triangle is built out of someone from marketing, sales, and customer support. Each of these realms will bring unique insights about your products and what your customers are already talking about. With your team assembled, you have them do some homework. Marketing brings information on brand positioning, current trends, and market research to the table. Sales has information on win-loss data, mega fans, and churn. Support has call logs, customer anecdotes, and these may be bad ones even. Armed with this information, you start sifting through for possible talk triggers. Step 2 is getting close to your customers. Next, you use your team to get involved with these customers. This is not some survey because it doesn't go deep enough and there is not enough relationship with the survey. Ask your team, how do customers purchase your product right now? Use your team to talk to the mega fans and the disgruntled customers to find out what matters to them. Why are they fans or why are they disgruntled? Ask your customers all the ways they use your products right now. You won't be able to predict every way, so which ones surprise you? Another key is to make sure that you use your own product. What is your experience with it? Was it easy to use? What were the snag points? What would you talk about in your experience? And is this good or bad? For the 3rd step, we create candidate talk triggers. Armed with all of this information, our team comes together to build these. Then we test them. Now, unfortunately, Bear and Lemon don't provide a great framework for testing here. The best framework I've seen is in a book called Traction. With the Traction Bullseye framework, you identify the single metric that matters. Then you test everything in a manner that allows you to track its impact on that single metric. Eliminate everything that's not working, and stick with the 2 or maybe 3 that seem to do the best. Invest even deeper in their testing until you have a clear winner. Stick with that clear winner. Talk Triggers does remind us to keep our candidate ideas easy. If it requires a wholesale change of the infrastructure of your company, maybe it's not the best one to start with. It needs to be easy enough that you can pull it off, because otherwise it probably doesn't qualify for the repeatable criteria of a talk trigger. Step 4, test and measure talk triggers. And let's start with a quote. By definition, word of mouth takes time to flower because it relies on one customer telling one other potential customer, or maybe a few, about you. One of the big problems with word of mouth marketing is that it takes a while to catch on. Where we can measure ad clicks and then cross-reference that with ad spend, talk triggers take longer to show fruit. Bear and Lemon don't give us a specific time frame, but they say that you should be aiming for 25% of the conversation about your company to deal with the talk trigger. If you're sitting at 15, maybe 20%, then tweak what you have and measure how it affects the percentage of conversation. Number 5 is expand and turn on. And this is all about implementing your talk trigger. Once you have something that works, roll it out and measure how it's being implemented in your business. Bear and Lemon don't provide a huge structure for this, but that's a whole book on its own, really. If you're looking for ways to implement change in your business, then you should read Switch by Chip and Dan Heath. Talk Triggers does tell us that our employees should love our talk triggers. They need to live them if we want them to have affect on our bottom line and what our customers talk about. They say to hire for alignment with the company mission, not just the skills that a potential employee has. Step 6 is amplify your talk trigger. This is where we try to get our talk trigger as far and as wide as possible. This is not just about getting attention, as Bear and Lemon say, though. And they say, doing something just for the attention it gets you might land you a reality series, but it won't win you many long-term fans. Media interest is a side effect of a great talk trigger, not a goal. This is not a referral program either. It's a talk trigger that is so refined and clear that a child can understand it and see its value. Now, the book finishes off by reminding us that after we built our first talk trigger, we need to start thinking about the next one. When Google Maps started, satellite imagery was a talking point. Then many maps had it, and Street View became a talking point for Google Maps. The point is that they kept rolling out technological talking points to stay talkable. Once you have a talk trigger, keep measuring it and start looking to the next one. This episode of Should I Read It is brought to you by my latest book, The Art of Focus. If you're tired of running around trying different ideas and getting no traction, if you are tired of having ideas, but you never actually get to work on them, if you're just tired, then The Art of Focus is for you. It's going to give you the exact systems I've used to build my ideal life, set up my times that I can really work and get lots done in the 6 hours a day that I work most days, and test my ideas in the marketplace so that I know they succeed. You can purchase it on Amazon at curtismchale.ca/recommends/AOF. Our final question, should I read Talk Triggers by Jay Baer and Daniel Lemon? Talk Triggers is a good overall look at what it takes to stand out in the marketplace. There are individual books that may cover a single chapter better, like Badass Your Brand does for Talkable Attitude, but overall, Talk Triggers does a great job of introducing an idea and leaving you with the tools to implement it. If you read Talk Triggers and want more, then I suggest these other 4 books. First off, Switch for learning to bring your ideas into a company. Second, the 10x Marketing Formula for identifying your single metric that matters. Third, Traction for a good testing plan. And fourth, Badass Your Brand for building a brand that has attitude and stands out. If I had to pick one of these 4 books to start with, then 10x Marketing Formula would be the first, followed by Talk Triggers. Then the others depending on which need is most pressing for your business. Overall, Talk Triggers is a good book to learn about how to build and implement word-of-mouth marketing. Thanks for listening to Should I Read It? To support the show, you can leave me a review in iTunes or a heart or a star in whatever podcast player you use. These help more people find the show. If you want to get more reading done, you should get an Audible membership. If you use curtismchale.ca/recommends/audible, that will help the production of the show financially.